I'm sure this is the point that those who disagree with you would put to you, and there is a vast majority, I think, of people, especially on Twitter, who probably disagree with you. They would say, Douglas Murray, you, sir, are a white man, therefore you could never experience racism. You could never experience the kind of experiences that black people experience. So who are you to have any kind of opinion, view, or understanding of what it's like to be a black man in America or Britain or anywhere else in the world?
Well, the problem with this game is that it's an irreducible game. I wrote about this a bit in The Madness of Crowds, my last book, and I have a chapter on race there, which raises this issue, among others, the issue of alleged incomprehensibility across racial boundaries. Now, first of all, it is an impossible game that is being demanded when we start down this route. And it goes something like this. It's two things that are asserted simultaneously, which are totally contradictory. People who say simultaneously, you must understand me, a thing that's very often said in a tone of considerable menace, you must understand me. Simultaneously, you will never understand me. So let's start from the very base of that presumption. Because of my skin color, and by the way, you can play this in other realms as well. You can do it on sexuality, you can do it on sex. Because I am a woman, or because I am heterosexual or homosexual, or I am a man, or because I'm black, or because I'm white, or because I'm Asian, or whatever else you want to do, because of this thing, you can't understand me. I don't think that's the beginning of any dialogue. I think it's the end of any potential dialogue. A total end to it. You can't understand me. If that's the case, what's the point? What's the point?
Perhaps that is their point, to try and end the dialogue there.
Quite possibly. And then let me say what the obvious follow-up to that is. If we don't have speech, we only have violence. If we don't have dialogue, we only have violence. The point of speech is that it is the thing you do not just to avert violence, but instead of violence. Otherwise, people have no other way to make themselves heard. Now, I believe in dialogue, in speaking, and not in violence. But when somebody says, basically, any and all dialogue with you and, brackets, all of you, what we perceive to be your kind, close brackets, is totally useless, what does that leave open exactly? I feel very strongly about this because you could see this being done in every direction once that catches on. Because we have decided you of your group have no ability to understand our group, we'll do what exactly? Now, you know, there are a lot of people who have done a lot of good work, a lot of good thinking, and a lot of good dialoguing throughout our lifetimes and before. History in America in particular, literary history in America, political history, is rife with people who have spent their lives trying to ensure that dialogue not only continues, but gets somewhere. And it is such an insult to them and to their memory when people who don't even know about them, haven't even read them, haven't even contended with their thoughts, can't even name them, decide that all of that is totally pointless, and that because they themselves feel particularly angry at this moment, all of that was worthless. I mean, you know, let's just revisit this again. The police in America, if we wanted to solve that issue, and there are a lot of people, black cops, white cops, black politicians, white politicians, who have been, my God, it's not as if this isn't an area that the American policing has thought about, and you know, it's not like that it's just a total Wild West and everyone can do whatever they want and they're ordered to be racist or anything. I mean, I've traveled over most of the states in the United States for about probably a quarter of a century now, and it's a very big, complex, messy, and brilliant country. But my God, they have tried to address issues like policing. And if you're going to try to solve that one, never mind before you get onto the whole presumptuous game of deciding which ethnic groups have total culpability across the globe for any one person's actions. If you're going to do that, at least contend with the fact that that the American police have certain challenges which are unusual, shall we say. I mean, it's true that Black Americans are disproportionately killed whilst in custody by police in the US. But it's also true that in simple numerical terms, year on year, more white people are killed in custody by US police. Now, what are we to make of that? You know, is it worth at least, instead of making it some kind of ping pong talking point, isn't it something that's interesting and worth interrogating as an issue? How about another one? You know, the American public are the most armed citizenry, I think, in the world, must be in the world. And because of this, the Second Amendment, whatever you think about it, and obviously in Britain we have a different view on that, I think, from many Americans, but because of the Second Amendment, the American police, when they pull over any car or enter any household, have much less certainty than, say, the British police do that they aren't walking into an unbelievably heavily armed situation. Does that make their job harder? Yes, certainly. Certainly. Does it excuse outrageous and reprehensible things like what happened in Minnesota? No, obviously not. But is their job very hard? Yes. And if you want to help make that job harder, then that's one direction you could go in. Or you could try to make it easier in some way. You could be one of the many, many people of every ethnic background in America who's worked incredibly hard on policing issues throughout our lifetimes and long before.